Good morning, one and all. It is indeed another successful day for us. I extend my welcome to our resource person and the participants. Welcome, Richa, Dr. Richa Raj.
Thank you, Dr. Janta. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can. After a long time. Happy to see you.
Happy to see you as well. Thank you for inviting me over.
It's a pleasure. Actually, I'm awaiting to hear your mesmerizing thoughts and voice.
Thank you.
Shall we proceed with the session?
Yeah, sure.
It gives me more pleasure in welcoming and introducing the resource person of our session, Dr. Richa Raj. Before reading her bio note, I would like to mention that Lieutenant Dr. Richa Raj was my PRCN batchmate in Officers Training Academy Gwalior and a good friend for my lifetime. With this excitement, I am going to read the highlights of her profile. Dr. Richa Raj is Assistant Professor of History at Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi. She has received her doctoral award from Center for Historical Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, on social and political impact of the Arya Samaj movement in North India. She is the author of a pamphlet and its discontents, a case study of Rangila Razul and the controversies surrounding it in colonial Punjab, and she published it in History and Sociology of South Asia in 2015, and of Swadeshi, Self-Reliance and Self-Help, a study of the Arya Samaj in colonial Punjab, 1890 to 1920s, in Moving the Social, Journal of Social History and the History of Social Movements in 2019, which is an Institute for Social Movements, Ruhr University, Bochum, Germany. Dr. Richa has been a former elected member of the Academic Council, University of Delhi, from 2017 to 2021. She is also an associate NCC officer at Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi. And I remember she received the Best NCC Officer Award in our PRCN course too. I'm more excited to listen to Dr. Richa's heart and a thought-provoking, penetrative speech. It is over to you, Dr. Richa.
Thank you, Dr. Janta Parthasarthi. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be speaking with students and participants, and also interacting with the faculty members of your most prestigious college. And heartiest congratulations again for the entire organizing team. I was there for the inaugural session yesterday, and I must say that I really enjoyed listening to the sessions yesterday. So today I'm going to share a little bit of whatever I have seen, happening in the past few years with relation to public funded higher educational institutions in India. I'm going to discuss certain issues of accessibility and inclusivity. Now, it is also said that, academics often talk about problems and they don't really discuss solutions. But, I would also, say that that is, if we do not talk about problems, where is the scope for improvement? How do we improve? How do we take the country forward? So therefore, it is important to also, have a kind of a critical attitude to how our nation has been progressing so far, and what are the things that we must, keep in mind when taking things forward. Therefore, today, as former member of the Academic Council of Delhi University. I've served there for about, 2 tenures of about 4 years in Delhi University, and have been, in my own small way, been seeing what kinds of changes that have come about in higher education, what are the proposed changes that are going to come about, and what has been happening in the past few decades from my readings of various or writers who have written about this, and interactions with various activists, teacher activists in Delhi University. So today in this particular session, I'm going to discuss ways in which higher education, especially public funded higher education, has advanced after independence. What have been the loopholes? What have been the challenges and the limitations? And then I would move on to also look at what the new national education policy of 2023 proposes for us. What are the limitations to it, and what is the way forward to it? And I would really love to have a discussion after I put forward my thoughts with you all. I'm looking at it more as, for me, the exciting part would be the last half an hour of this session, where I would get to hear from you all as well. What are your thoughts on public funded higher education in India, where it has come from and where it is going now, right? So I would like to begin as a historian, and I would also look at the past and see what have been the trends so far in higher education in India. Right. So after independence, basically, the focus of the government, because of the lack of education in India, the legacy of the British imperialism in India was, the fact that Indians were left not just impoverished, but also, in terms of education, they were also lagging far behind once the British went back, withdrew imperialism from India. So in the post-independent government, one of the major task of that particular, the successive governments during that time, was to first of all to bring the economy of the country up from so much of such a deep level of impoverishment, and also to start at the scratch, especially with related to elementary education in India, right? So therefore the focus of the government was uplifting of elementary education in India, which means mainly school education, right? So of course, elementary education is important for various respects. School education is important. It serves as a foundation for the individual. It also imparts a minimum level of literacy, though not a complete level of literacy, but at least a minimum level of literacy. But it does not provide literacy that is sustainable, that could sustain the individual for a very long time. Also, only elementary education does not guarantee that children could not relapse, go back into illiteracy, right? And I'm just going to discuss some of the ideas that have been put forward time and again by a very noted academic. There's a former vice chancellor of National University of Educational Planning and Administration of New Delhi, that is Jandiala B.G. Tilak, who has written extensively on public funded higher education. And he says that, elementary education may impart some valuable attributes in terms of attitudes and skills, and it is also able to uplift the people from below the poverty line to above it. But the level of that upliftment, or the level of that ascent, is not sufficient. It is not very high, right? So the danger, there is always, if an individual only gets educated in elementary education, that is school education, it is commonsensical that there is a danger of that person to fall back into poverty line, right? And that danger remains at an all-time high always, if a person is only remains limited, or the person's accessibility to education remains limited to elementary education, right? And also elementary education, while giving the minimum levels of literacy, does not really impart the skills and knowledge that is necessary for employment in a job. And of course, we know that a job that should ensure decent wages and living conditions for that people, right? So whatever the benefits or the advantages that there may be of elementary education, and it is definitely definitely we cannot ignore that one must focus on elementary education, but it is the higher education on the other hand. Once elementary education has been gained by an individual, it is actually the higher education that consolidates that gain, right? That have been received at the elementary and the secondary education. And it is that higher education that provides skills that ultimately become useful for the individual in the labor market, while helping in innovating technology and sustaining growth of the individual, right? So therefore, higher education, it is actually higher education that keeps people above the poverty line, without the danger of their falling back into poverty trap, right? Whether it be educational poverty or income poverty, right? So therefore, it is the higher education actually that improves the social, occupational, and economic mobility of individuals, and through individuals of households as well, right? So if people are given that chance, if they are given that opportunity and that access to higher education, it automatically in some way improves the happiness indicator of the households as well. The households, the entire households income levels, their access to resources increases, and that also in some way brings about some kind of a social upliftment of women as well. Women who are the least takers or receivers of resources in generally in societies, in patriarchal societies, right? So therefore, higher education in general therefore has a poverty alleviating effect, and thereby it also contributes to economic development, right? And generally, as I said, it also improves in total human development as well, right? For example, it helps in reducing infant mortality. If women are educated, then definitely that will have an impact on reducing infant mortality as well, and also of life expectancy, right? So therefore, in all, higher education is a very important tool to attain human freedom in all respect, a freedom that helps in attaining other freedom, right? So if one is educated, and I do agree, that if one is educated, especially one attains higher education, that individual is free in all respects, and that human freedom also helps in attaining other kinds of freedoms, right? So therefore, even up till the 1970s, 80s, though the focus of the government was on uplifting elementary education, but it was soon realized that one must also focus on higher education, right? So higher education was very important for India to grow in a holistic manner, right? A very important development came about in the early 1990s, right? That was the time, if you all remember, I don't know, people of my age, and also mine and Dr. Janta's contemporaries may remember, that was the time when we had TV sets in our houses, and then gradually satellite, television also came about. We could listen to interesting programs, not just those that were, telecast here produced here in India, but also abroad. So that was the time. The early 1990s was a time of liberalization of economy, right? The neoliberal economic policy, right? So that sort of brought about an era of free trade policy, right? That regions or nations could be connected to each other. They could have certain kind of an economic relationship with each other, which is free from any kind of regulations, etc. Right? So, that also, the neoliberal policies of the 1990s also, brought about an era of the idea of free trade in higher education, right? Which meant that, there could be an exchange of tools related to education, of systems, educational systems, of curriculums, etc., between certain regions, right? But it kicked off at a slow pace, but of late it has been really making a big impact in the educational sector, right? But what it also did was, therefore, it facilitated the growth of the private sector in higher education, right? And since that time, the most important criticism that has been leveled by several academics on this idea of bringing privatization into education has been that it has often been at the cost of higher education, right? That a higher education, public funded higher education, which meant that, in order to make education accessible to everyone, it was considered as a duty of the state, the government, to provide such kinds of opportunities to people, such kinds of resources to people, especially those coming from the marginalized sections, right? But privatization, in that sense, happened at the cost of public higher education since the 1990s onwards. And so, critiques have felt that since then there has been a lack of a coherent long-term policy on higher education in India and a larger vision for its development, right? So, therefore, increasingly, because of the impact of the liberal, neoliberal policies on education, higher education began to be seen as a non-merit good, right? That is, a commodity which did not really produce in terms of material gains, for the state, and therefore it, must not be financed by the state. So this sort of an idea began to be percolated and spread, gradually began to be implemented in the various policies of the government from the 1990s onwards, right? What we see is that the allocations, the budgetary allocations for higher education, that the government must spend on higher education, on setting up colleges, universities, using that money for the infrastructure of colleges, universities, of libraries, setting up libraries, labs, etc. Also recruiting more faculty members. This, idea that it must be done by the government, this idea began to take a backstage because it was, under the new liberal policy, education began to be seen as a non-merit good, right? So if we look at the 8th and the 9th 5-year plans, for education, what we see is that the 8th plan, which is from 1992 to 97, and the 9th year plan, which is 9th 5-year plan, which is 1997 to 2002, here allocations for higher education touched an all-time low, right? Hardly 7% to 8% of the total plan expenditure on education was devoted to higher education. And this was quite less as compared to the earlier 5-year plan, that is the 4th 5-year plan, which is from 1969 to 74, which gave at least 1/4 allocation of the total expenditure on education to higher education, right? So therefore, there was a drastic decline seen in these 5-year plans, the 8th and the 9th, right? Also, there was a steep cut in budget allocations for libraries, labs, faculty improvement programs, research, and so on, right? So, and usually, budget allocations to higher education also translates into scholarships being given to those students who are deserving, who are meritorious, but they belong to the weaker sections, and therefore they may not have had the opportunities to avail, to sort of, use the talent and to use their merit. So there had been scholarships, such as the merit cum means scholarships that went to meritorious students from the weaker sections. But we find a sharp fall in the budgetary allocations for such scholarships as well, right? So as a result, even when the economy was growing, at more than 7% to 8% per annum in the 1990s, there was no significant increase in the allocation of public resources to higher education, right? However, by the early decades of this century, by the 2010s onwards, there was this entire with a rapid pace in globalization, global networks increasing gradually, greater technological improvements. It was it became comparatively easy to connect with universities and colleges from other places, to have foreign exchange students, for foreign exchange programs, have them come here, or our Indian students to go there for some time, etc. Greater connectivity being established. It was realized by the earlier decades of this present century. It was realized that if India was to become this great Asian tiger, right, it was important to allocate public funds for education, right? Because economic miracles could not come about in India without allocating public resources towards higher education, right? Because poor quality educational systems were features of impoverished developing countries. If you look at the state of education in the countries that are impoverished, that are developing, and also that are those that are developing, you see that they have that is a recurring feature, a consistent feature amongst all impoverished nations. So it was acknowledged that the enrollment ratio, okay, in the sense that people who enroll into higher education must be raised to at least 15% by 2012, from around 10% that we had in around 1995, right? So it had to, by about 2012, the government at that time said that we must increase the gross enrollment ratio of students in higher education, right? So therefore, by 2009 to 10, the gross enrollment ratio, according to the then Ministry of Human Resource Development's statistics, reached about 15% by 2009 to 10, right? And evidence, and that seemed to be a good trend, and we seem to be sort of picking up pace. Once the focus came on higher education by the government at the time, right? So evidence shows that economically advanced countries that are economically advanced, doing very well, in terms of the technological development, they have a universalized secondary education that provides a fair degree of access to higher education, and have a gross enrollment ratio which ranges from between 40% to 90%. Right? So, countries that were developing, that were advanced, had a gross enrollment ratio, that is, students enrolling into higher education, of about 40 to 90%. Whereas we in India had only reached to about 15% by 2009 to 10, right? And, also the other trend also is very true, and that is that no country with a low enrollment ratio of about 10 to 15% could become an advanced country economically, politically, or socially, right? So a low enrollment ratio of about 10 to 15% would not guarantee advancement or development to a country, either economically or politically or socially, right? So therefore, keeping all of these things in mind, in the next 5-year plan, that is the 11th 5-year plan of 2007 to 12, which is also precisely known as the educational plan, allocation to higher education was scaled up, right? And we see major expansion in higher education being planned during that time. 30 new central universities were to be set up, of which about at least 15 were opened till 2012. And when we say central universities, we're talking about public funded universities which provide subsidized education, right? What does that mean? When you say public universities providing subsidized education, which means that, students who are from rural areas, students who are economically deprived, also socially deprived, students who have been left marginalized due to either caste, or a tribal kind of a status, they can also think of attaining a higher education because education is subsidized for them, right? So, for instance, I have in my own class a rich, diverse, set of students, wherein students are there from different sections of the society and from different regions who could not think of, coming to Delhi and studying in Delhi because of the high cost of living involved. But because central universities are public funded universities, students from far-flung areas, conflict-torn areas, and marginalized sections of the country can dream of coming to Delhi and studying at a subsidized rate, right? So therefore, this seems to be quite important. There were plans for expansion, which included setting up of new Indian institutes of management, new Indian institutes of technology, were there in the planning, in the pipeline, about college, 200 colleges of engineering and technology, etc. Began to take shape. Even the recruitment of faculty members began to take place again, and the University Grants Commission formulated new scholarship schemes to promote research and to improve the access of the weaker sections in it, right? So, however, so this was really good, at the time, in that particular plan, that the government was thinking of expanding public funded higher education, whether it was in terms of social sciences or the medical sciences or technology, and so on, right? But at the same time, because of the influence of liberalism, right? The government at that time also tried to open the doors to foreign universities in India, right? And the idea was to allow the entry of foreign universities, and also therefore to also make gains out of these foreign universities as per the framework of the General Agreement on Trades in Services that was signed by various nations. It was also called GATS at the time, right? So therefore, this sort of opened, this GATS and the policies that were taken by the World Trade Organization to liberalize education, right? To allow the entry of universities into each other's nations, etc., sort of opened the door for foreign universities to come in. But at that time, it did not happen quite quickly, and I'll be discussing about that in a moment, because not many of, even though the government at that time in 2013 was trying to push a bill to allow foreign universities, we see that the top 20 global universities, including Yale, Cambridge, MIT, Stanford, etc., they did not show any interest in entering the Indian market, right? So therefore, participation of the foreign universities as a result up till now was only limited to having combined, sort of twinning programs in which sharing of faculty as well as students happened by partnering with each other, right? With partnering institutions and also offering distance education, right? However, the foreign universities in India has now, under the national education policy, which proposes to give a further thrust to allowing to sort of opening the gates to the foreign universities in India. And now, and in that respect, now I'm just going to discuss about what of late, the policy of the government has been related to higher education, right? So all of us have heard a lot about the national education policy. The national education policy is a comprehensive framework to guide the wholesale, development of education in the country, right? And we have had, in the past also, India has had at least three national education policies to date. The first one came up in 1968, the second one in 1986, right? And then in 1992, which was revised in 1992, and now we have the recently released one, which was finalized and brought into the public domain in July 2020, right? So here, considering the economic reforms that are being proposed, in the National Education Policy 2020. There has been a lot of debate, immense debate over the feasibility, over the structures that the National Education Policy proposes, over the kinds of sweeping reforms that it proposes. How practical is it? How feasible is it? There has been a lot of debates in the past 2 years, relating to that. Right? I would like to approach the present National Education Policy from the point of view of Gandhi, and Gandhi's talisman. Gandhi, who is one of the most revered historical figures, not a person who is respected not just in India but also abroad, and who has been the inspiration behind civil rights movements, in the USA especially. In one of his last notes that was written in 1948, reflected his deep social thought. And let's look at what was the talisman that Gandhi gave us. He said, "I will give you a talisman. Whenever you are in doubt, or when the self becomes too much with you, apply the following test. Recall the face of the poorest and the weakest man and woman whom you may have seen, and ask yourself if the step you contemplate is going to be of any use to him or her. Will she or he gain anything out of it? Will it restore him or her to a control over her or her own life and destiny? In other words, will it lead to Swaraj or freedom for the hungry and spiritually starving millions? Then you will find your doubts and yourself melt away." Right? So, for me, that has been a regular measure in which I try to analyze certain policies. Would these policies help in alleviating or the problems of the weakest person standing in the line, in the queue, of the poorest person who is standing in the line while taking access to resources, right? So in that respect, I think it is very important to evaluate the National Education Policy of 2020, right? So again, when we coming back to the idea of foreign universities, the National Education Policy, though opening the door for the foreign universities to set up their campuses here in India, does not really talk about whether these universities will give some kind of subsidized education to those students who are economically disadvantaged, to the economically poor students, right? And also whether students from the rural areas will be able to gain an admission to these foreign universities. That is also another question that has been left unanswered in the national education policy, right? The policy also talks about an overhauling of the undergraduate program by introducing the 4-year undergraduate program with an exit policy after every year, right? And this especially is, in a sense, this 4-year undergraduate program has often been being pushed as an idea that will allow the student the flexibility to leave the program if she cannot afford it, to leave the program and go out and look for employment opportunity after 1 year. Right, after 1 year, if someone leaves that undergraduate program, she will be given a certificate, and then after 2 years, a diploma, and after 3 years, an honors degree, and after 4 years it would be an honors degree with research, right? So it has often been said that it is a progressive move. It is in favor of those students who are forced to drop out due to financial or other constraints, and therefore it actually gives a fair chance to the students, because they are, after all, getting their certificate after completing whatever 1 or 2 years of them. But the question is that will students who opt out after 1 year, after getting a certificate, or just after 1 year, what kind of a job opportunity would be there for that particular student, right? And so instead of actually addressing the root cause of the reason for the high dropout rates of the students, why would a student like to opt out after 1 year? Why is the student forced to opt out? There are many students who are forced to opt out, either because of economic or financial constraints, or even social constraints. Girls are often, they're told that marriage is the only way out. They should just get married. There's no point in studying further, and so on. So these are the social constraints that there are. So instead of handling the root cause of the high dropout rates in terms of addressing the economic and the social constraints, what this concept, actually, there has been this skepticism that it actually makes the deprived and the vulnerable sections all the more deprived and vulnerable. It sort of makes this entire exodus of people, students who can opt out after 1 year, to just opt out and try and sort of go from pillar to post, trying to get employment for themselves, right? So it's sort of, in that way, is formalizing the dropout ratio in higher educational institution. It is not really helping the students to not drop out and to go for further studies for higher education. It only helps, therefore, in formalizing the dropout rate. And this system, therefore, will have a deeper impact on students who are women and of other genders, right? Students who are from the scheduled castes, other backward castes, and the scheduled tribes, because majority of these students belong to the economically weak, vulnerable, and marginalized sections, and they are mostly products of government schooling. And we know what the situation of government schools are, in India, right? And we have seen, academics have seen a substantial dropout rates amongst students that are from these particular section, right? So therefore, the system of this multiple exit points, in particular, sort of sabotages in some way the spirit of the reservation system. So even though it gives admission to the student who come from marginalized sections through the reservation, but this entire multiple exit system, by formalizing the dropout rate, also sort of goes against the spirit of the enabling factor, that was the reservation. Of course, there are various criticisms of the reservation, and we really need to see whether reservation has really benefited, the lowest of the lowest of the people in the entire social system, social hierarchy in India. Yet at the same time, it is also a fact that it will be most of these students coming from these sections who will be opting out after the first year, right? So there is more to be done, is what my point is, as far as higher education is concerned. Another criticism that has been leveled out at the national education policy is about privatization of education, especially of higher education, right? We can see that, at least about 60% of higher educational institutions in India are directly or indirectly controlled by private players, right? It is important that, in a country like ours, which is still struggling with the idea of how to utilize our resources, there has been a general increase in income of people, but that income has not been equally distributed. It's an open secret, right? That income that we see, the immense economic growth that we see in India, it does not actually percolate down to the lower sections. It definitely has not been equally distributed amongst various classes of India, right? So therefore, by bringing about private entities into higher education, right? And also, allowing, withdrawing, fundings of the state towards public education, we see a lot of dangers ahead with corporatization of higher education. And how is that being done and being proposed through the national education policy is, for example, the creation of HEFA, that is Higher Education Financing Agency, right? HEFA is a joint venture of Canara Bank and Ministry of Human Resource Development. It is supposed to provide financial assistance for the creation of educational infrastructure and for research and development in Indian universities, right? And curiously, HEFA funding from HEFA, that is taking loan from HEFA, will replace the current grant assistance that is given by the government to the people, right, towards the infrastructure projects of higher educational institutions. So what the national education policy is proposing is a shift away from a grant-based education to a loan-based education, right? A transition from a grant-based education to a loan-based education, which means that institutions, instead of relying on the grants from, granting agencies such as the University Grants Commission, would now have to look upon HEFA, which is a joint venture of Canara Bank and Ministry of Human Resource Development, for getting funds to bring about improvement in their own, educational institutions, right? And so this therefore means that, there will be a push towards this loan-based education. And, the people who would, the students would be the recipients of the teachers and the non-teaching staff in the college. And of course, the students will be the people who would be adversely impacted by this. Because where will HEFA get its funds from? We are told that HEFA will mobilize the market on the basis of equity from individuals or corporate entitles through bonds to finance the requirements of educational institutions, right? Therefore, once this process is underway, public universities will be pushed to borrow from HEFA by signing contracts, right? And a lot of public universities have already signed contracts with the HEFA for loan, right? So the universities, when the universities would sign the contracts with HEFA for loan, the universities, where will the universities get the funds to pay back the loan, right? It will, of course, need to either mortgage its land or buildings to some kind of a private agency, or and at the same time, it will also lead to an increase in the fee structure of the students. So that has been the criticism of this entire privatization that is being pushed through the national education policy, right? So, so therefore, wherein earlier a student from an economically marginalized section could think of studying in a prestigious institution, public funded higher educational institution, would now have to think of other ways, or perhaps not think of at all studying in a higher educational institution which is privatized and which has a very high fee structure which the student cannot afford, right? So therefore, in this process, universities will have to borrow loans from HEFA and would be indebted to HEFA, right? So therefore, this is something that clears the path for privatization of higher education in India. And also at the same time, there have been since the past many years the introduction of self-financing in public institutions as well. So certain courses, that have been brought in through the self-financing mode also means that the students would have to cough up a lot of money in order to be able to study in those institutions, right? So I think I'm just falling short of time, so I'll just try and wind up in 10 minutes. Also, the national education policy also talks about the great digital age, the digitization of education that would be brought about. In the recent budget of 2022, a proposal has been put forward to set up a digital university to provide education in different Indian languages that will be built on a hub and spoke model, right? Which means that the best public universities and institutions in the country will collaborate as a network of hub spokes and provide sort of digital education to the students, right? Now, so there has been, it is definitely something, in a sense, something that makes one feel that this is a move forward by employing technology and employing innovation in every aspect of education, right? There has been a lot of focus on using technology in teaching, in learning and assessment, in administration and management, so setting up of virtual labs and so on. But, it has been our experience in the last 2 years of the pandemic and online teaching. I think all of us have felt how difficult it is for students who do not have access to good internet connectivity. Especially those students who are in villages, who are in remote areas, who are in the far-flung areas, how difficult it is for them to gain access to education through the digital medium. In that ways, I think the pandemic has shown us that the idea for digitization of education is still not practical. It is still not feasible for Indian education, right? Nothing can at this time compare to offline classes, right? Because then the students can come and sit and listen to the teachers, and we have seen that in the pandemic. And also, it also gives an equal opportunity to all the students in the class to access the education that is being given to them inside the classroom, right? It does not create that kind of what has been being popularized as the great digital divide, right? We still have that great digital divide, and we know for a fact that there have been a lot of dropouts in the past 2 years of students from school because they did not have access to technology. They do not have access to the device, right? For instance, and this is not just something that is just being spoken about in a generic sense. According to a data that is brought about by the Unified District Information System for Education, right? At least, the overall percentage of schools with functional computers is down from 42.1% in 2012 to 13 to 36.8% in 2016 to 17, right? It also says that only 24% of Indian households have internet facility, only 24%. So you can imagine how education happened, how online education happened in the past 2 years. Only 11% of the households had a functional computer, right? And a little over 15% of rural households had access to the internet, right? So therefore, an over-reliance on technology and online programs to achieve set targets seems highly impractical, right? Instead of focusing on digital education, the focus of the government should be on setting up more and more public funded institutions of education, not just in capital cities, but also in the district centers, also in the towns, in the small towns and mufassals, so that students can get access to good quality education, in a subsidized manner, right? So that should be the target, or that should be the aim of the government, right? And also, just lastly, just talking about the budget allocations to higher education. According to the Kothari Commission of 1965, that was, the first time when the national education policy was being framed for India. It was recommended at the time that India must spend around 6% of the gross domestic product GDP on education, right? But over successive years, the allocation has consistently been much lower and hovering around only 3% of the GDP in recent years, which is very dismal. 3% of your GDP being allocated to education. How can you even think of becoming economically and socially developed, right? Um, uh, According to the economic survey that was presented by our Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Monday, January 31st, the expenditure on education as a percentage of GDP was 2.8% in 2019 to 20. It was 3.1% in 2020 to 21, and 3.1% in 2021 to 22. Right? So again, just hovering around 3% of the GDP. The statement of the National Education Policy 2020 says that the center and the states will work together to increase the public investment in the education sector to reach the 1965 target of 6% of GDP at the earliest. Right? This reflects that the state, there is no clear commitment by the state. It is saying that the state and the center will work, but how will they work, right? Digitization and privatization of educational institution does not seem to be the way that one can actually attain that particular target, especially when the budgetary allocation to public funded higher education institutions seems to be a dismal 3%, right? Now, I'm not just going to go into the statistics of how much has been allocated to higher education, but what one can actually say is that increasingly in the past few years there have been a withdrawal of the responsibility of the state towards public funded higher education institution in terms of providing finances to the educational institutions, right? So this is also reflected, this withdrawal of funding from higher education is also reflected in the various schemes that are related to research, right? For instance, a report that was published on 5th January 2022 in Telegraph India, the University Grants Commission has stopped several research projects while some are lying dormant, allegedly because of lack of funds from the center. The major research project, for example, of the UGC is a case in point. According to the annual reports of the UGC, funding for the scheme has been declining over the past 5 years as it has been declared closed. The UGC website suggests that around half a dozen other research promotion schemes have been shelved. They have been put off. The website shows as closed since 2017 to 18 several programs. And this list of closed programs, closed research programs includes the Emeritus Fellowship, that is fellowship that was given to scholars who are retired up to the age of 70 years. They could still conduct research by that fellowship. Also, the Dr. S. Radhakrishnan Postdoctoral Fellowship in Humanities and Social Sciences, postdoctoral fellowship to women candidates, and postdoctoral fellowships to SC/ST candidates have all been closed, right? The National Fellowship for Scheduled Caste Students is also shown to have been discontinued in 2018 to 19, right? And 100 slots each used to open in science and humanities streams every alternate year. During 2019 to 20, an expenditure of about rupees 1.45 crore had been incurred to pay 91 beneficiaries, right? The number of beneficiaries had been 169 the previous year, that is 2018 to 19, when the UGC had spent rupees 3.82 crore. There were 559 beneficiaries during 2017 to 18, when the UGC had shelled out rupees 10 crore for this scheme, right? But all of these schemes, especially the schemes that are there for emeritus fellowships, for the SC/ST students, for women candidates, etc., have been closed. Right? So these are some of the problems that we need to, that we need to consider. And the successive governments, whatever government that it may be, must take cognizance of the fact that India has its own historical context. It has its own complexities, its own limitations. And therefore, there must be a unique model, a unique Indian model that must be set up instead of simply emulating the West. The idea of bringing in foreign universities is often considered good because it will bring in universities from the West, right? But instead of relying on the West, on foreign intellectual capital, we must build our own Indian, a truly Indian model of education. The government must take measures to lessen the gap between various sections of the people instead of broadening it, right? Just as the 1986 policy was accompanied by a program of action of 1992, it was called POA 1992. This government must also bring about a program of action 2020 that should take into account all of these limitations and loopholes of the national education policy of 2020 and seek to modify it accordingly so that Gandhi's talisman remains a guiding factor. Thank you. So that's my presentation, and I would really like to get some questions and we can have a good discussion on this.
Dr. HRS, there are some questions in our chat. Shall I read it out?
Yes, please.
When we are talking about digital education, that is online class, what are your views that offline education was more successful or online?
Okay. As I said, that in my own class, from my own personal experience, I had students who were from the Northeast, from far-flung areas, and they were consistently, absent from my online classes in the last 2 years. So this is just a very small, why should we look at other examples? We can just look at our own examples as teachers and see that, we ourselves have felt that, some students were missing from the class, not because they were bunking it or they did not want to be there, but because they genuinely did not have access to the internet, right? And these were students from, say, Northeast, from Jammu Kashmir, also from some rural areas throughout the country, right? So definitely offline education is definitely is a more enabling factor for the students, because then they can have this access, a direct interaction with the students, right? And they do not miss out on any of the classes, right? So definitely offline. And also otherwise also the students, only recently Delhi University has opened up for offline classes, and students are immensely happy, and they it is coming from them, that this is much better sitting inside the classroom, because otherwise there were 100 distractions at home, right? Home is a challenge in itself that way. So the students would not get that time and that space to learn from homes. So I think when in a country like India, where we still are grappling with a lot of problems and complexities, we still should focus mostly on offline. It doesn't mean that online education is not good. There are various very good courses that are offered online, and the fact that we are also meeting each other virtually like this also shows that online education can be a good tool, but only as a supplementary factor, not the major factor. To supplement along with offline classes, we can meet each other virtually like this, the way we are doing, as a supplementary factor.
The second question is, how girls should take actions towards higher education to convince family and the society for her studies?
Yes, that's a very good and a very important question, because often if we look at the economies of households, if you look at the houses, often, I would not say all, but often the the surplus resource is only given to the girl. If there is enough money, if there are more male student members or children, it is the majority of the resources of the household is allocated for them, and the remaining is allocated to the women. And apart from that, there are other things also. It is, there are many limitations for a girl to go travel, go to a big city and study there, stay there, because it is also not considered as a safe thing by the parents and the well-wishers, right? So if there is a rollback of public funding from higher education, it will adversely impact women mostly, right? Because often household economies do not allow women to have access to education, which is very expensive, right? So it would, many academics and especially feminist scholars believe that it would eventually lead to a consolidation or entrenchment of patriarchy, by asking women that, oh, they don't need to study further because it's so expensive, so you just do the household chores, that's all, you don't, become a professional, right? So it is going to set back the society, in many ways possible. So I think women, what should they do about it? Small thing is that, we can begin by just talking about it, by acknowledging that there is a problem somewhere, right? Talking about it, writing about it, discussing it with friends and teachers, right? Creating a public opinion about it. If women don't speak for themselves, no one else will do it for them. So it's important that we speak up for ourselves first.
Thank you, Richa. The next question is whether NEP, National Education Policy, is good. If it is the case, why many states are not for it?
Yes, exactly. So, many states, like for example, Tamil Nadu itself, because the national education policy promotes a certain homogenization. It says that, the entire spirit of the national education policy is certain centralization. Okay. Even though it talks about, teaching children in the regional languages up till class 4, it does not really, it says wherever possible, for example. So it is not really promoting vernacular languages and vernacular cultures, right? And there are, in different states also, the states have built up, because education is in the concurrent list, which means that education is something that is monitored and supervised by the center as well as the state. So the states have come up with their own educational policies. They're according to, steeped in their own culture. You cannot ask someone in North India to, emulate something from South India, or you cannot push something on South India or something on the states of South India, because South Indian states would have their own culture. They need to, and rightly so. It is important, right, that their own culture must be followed, it must be taken forward, and the vernacular, their own languages must be protected and preserved and taken forward, right? So that is one of the reasons why it is not being followed by many of the states, because it is important to recognize that educational institutions are rooted in the languages and the cultures of each of the individual states, which are very different from each other. So one cannot promote a homogenization. Right?
Another question is also related to NEP. Will the NEP promote replicating the idea of education of the West, or it will help innovate the knowledge spectrum?
Okay, again, a very good question. Very good question. So, one would definitely be open. One should be open to ideas from the West as well as ideas from the East. Why must we only look at the West? Okay, so one must be open to ideas coming from outside, but we must not do so at the cost of suppressing our own ideas, our own systems, and our own structures, right? So if we are allowing foreign universities to set up their campuses here, it must be done in such a way that it allows equity in education, right? It allows the students to get that equal opportunity to be studying in that foreign university. And it must not create, very important, it must not create a segregation among students. The students who have studied from these foreign universities in India are better qualified, they are more skilled, they will get a better job opportunity than the students who have studied in Indian universities. That must not happen, because then that is a kind of a new imperialism of the West, right? We have fought so hard to throw off British imperialism, but this would be a new kind of imperialism if we create such kinds of students who would be seen by the society as more qualified, more skilled than students who studied in our own universities, right? So it must definitely not be at the cost of our own universities. Right.
Thank you, Richa. We have amalgamation of schools in NEP. Is it not against rural education?
What of students? What is
Amalgamation of schools,
Mm-hmm.
is it not against rural education?
Yes, the focus of the NEP should have been on setting up of more and more schools in the rural areas. Definitely, right? So, as far as school education proposals related to school education is concerned in the NEP, some things are definitely to be applauded, but again, some things are left quite vague, and it does not really. It just talks about increasing the gross enrollment ratio, which means to to include students from the rural areas as well, right? By 2045. But it does not really list out how it will be done, right? And the only thing that seems to come up in that policy is that it will be done through digital education. And what will it do actually? Students in the rural areas, not every house will have a computer, not every house will have a device for that digital education. And also, what will be the quality of that digital education is also something that has to be considered. So I really don't think that rural students in the rural areas would be able to get good quality education through the digital medium.
Another one is we have 24% of internet facility in our country. Is it possible for making digitalization in our country?
Yes, it is definitely possible. Like the way every household, was given electricity over a period of time, right? Definitely digitization can also happen, but it also means, a lot of public resources because infrastructure will have to be built in that way, right? And so we need to see that in what way will that infrastructure be built? Would it be done by the state, and therefore subsidized internet connection will be given, or would it be done by private players? In the last 2 years, because of the increasing demand of internet connection, reports have come up of how there have been an increase in the rates of internet service providers, such as Airtel, private internet service providers. There has been an increase in a rate because of the increase in demand. So when we are trying to build up infrastructure related to digitization throughout the country, we need to also ensure that is done through public resources, not through private players. Because again, if it's very expensive, not everyone will partake of it. Not everyone will take that internet connection. They'll go for a cheaper one, and a cheaper one will not provide internet connection, and again, classes will not be accessible to those students, right? So again, I'm just kind of trying to drive home the point: how important is it for the state to take an important decision here, to not withdraw, take back public funding from higher education, right?
Finally, COVID pandemic has created a negative impact in our education system, and how can we make it up?
How can we make it up? Yes, good question, and we definitely need to think about it. I think the impact of the COVID has been not only in terms of distancing, class students and teachers from the classroom, but also in terms of emotional and mental, impact that has come up on various individuals. And I think it is important for us to collectively realize that and take positive measures towards it. One is that within the classrooms, I think here teachers will have to play a very important role, just like they have been doing the past 2 years. School teachers as well as college teachers would have to play a very important role in not just taking classes, but also I think taking counseling sessions, just informal counseling sessions with students to sort of in some way help in bringing about better emotional and mental health of the students, right? And we can definitely make it up by all of us collectively doing it together, right? So I think one is this kind of an informal collective sessions of mentoring, counseling done by students, also acknowledging that we need to have certain communities within colleges, within schools, which will help out, which will only be dedicated to this work. I think it will have to, again, the solution lies back in the classrooms, back in the schools and colleges.
And NEP is going to implement privatization of education system, privatization in education system. So will it be limited only for a limited as well as rich people only?
Yes. So again, the idea that if privatization is brought about, there is this idea of how if the government will withdraw funding, colleges will be made autonomous, especially depending upon their accreditation. So if they have a good NAC score or NAC grading, they will become autonomous, right? So when we say that, autonomy is good, colleges will have their own rules and regulations, they will have their own curriculum and so on. So isn't that good in some way? But when the government is talking about autonomy, what it is actually talking about is not autonomy in terms of curriculum, right? If there was an autonomy in colleges in Tamil Nadu, it would be so nice, to have curriculum on Tamil literature and culture and language and so on, right? But the government is not talking about autonomy in the sense of a curriculum, but it's talking about financial autonomy, right? And what does that mean? It means that the colleges will have to raise their own funds for their own infrastructure, for their own libraries, for their laboratories, for paying salaries to the teachers and so on. And where will this come from? It will come from the fee structure of the students, right? The fee structures would have to be raised. And this is something that has been consistently, resisted by many teachers associations, including Delhi University Teachers Association, right? So how do you think that, someone who is from, an economically deprived section can then afford to pay this high fee structure? I don't think so. I think many people, even after taking loans from banks, etc., education loans, not everyone could have that sort of access to higher education, right?
We can see generally in state government schools or colleges how teachers with very well qualified teachers are very well qualified teachers, but their result or less the quality is not up to the mark. Why so?
That also depends on the teacher training institutions that have been set up by the concerned state, right? So when you talk about budgetary allocation, it also means not just allocating money for setting up schools and colleges, but also allocating money for training of those teachers, right, for their training. So therefore, training schools for the teachers is very important. We do have academic staff colleges that conduct courses like the orientation and the refresher and so on. But if the government will withdraw funds from these as well, there will be a slight chance of having good training colleges and institutions, right? So it is important that governments, successive governments must also focus on teacher training, right? And the fact about differing quality of teachers also is a reflection how in the past, higher education has been so much treated, with a lack of respect, right? That it has led to setting up of some institutions which do not give good education, but some institutions which do give good education. That has been because of the kinds of economic policies related to education that have happened in the past few years as well.
What do you think are the reasons that drag the research culture in our country? We
Mm-hmm.
do have research enthusiasts, but don't shine. Why?
Yes. So research is very important, not just in terms of science, but also in terms of social sciences and humanities, right? And again, why we do not have a research culture is also because, as I said in my paper, from the beginning itself, the first few years, also because of our, lagging behind in several terms, especially with respect to education, the focus of the government was on elementary education for many, many years. Because of, it was because of the circumstances. The British had left us, they had introduced English education, but the employment or opportunity that they could give to Indians was only up to that of a clerk. Indians could not rise above, not till a very late time could they rise above, that of a clerk, right? So therefore, when they left India, India was materially, impoverished, right? Economically underdeveloped, even in terms of education, we did not have good educational institutions. So, the Indian leaders at that time felt that we should focus first on elementary education, right? And that sort of, has kind of neglected higher education, neglected the idea of research for a very long time. It was from the 1990s onwards that we have, and especially from the beginning of this century, that there has been more focus on research, right? So at this time, when there has been some focus on research in some institutions, not in all institutions, at this time, it is really not wise and practical to pull back government funding. See, again, it comes down to this, why would anyone, because India, a large population of people in India are still poor, right? And research means that in very, very practical terms, research means that you will be spending your 5 to 6 years at least of MA, MPhil, PhD, 5 to 6 years only to do that study, to do that research, which means that those 5 to 6 years you would not be doing any other job. If in most of the institutions, that is the rule, that you will not be doing any job. So who will have the leisure to give up those 5 to 6 years without doing any job in their early 20s? Only those people who can afford it, right? Only those people who are perhaps maybe from middle class or higher income groups who can afford to have that leisure of giving their 5 to 6 years to research. Not everyone could do that. However meritorious they may be, however talented, however intelligent, however sharp they may be, but they cannot do that because of the financial constraints. They have to get into a job, right? So in this scenario, again, good employment opportunities and good opportunities for conducting research is the primary responsibility of the state. And by the state, I mean the central government. And of course, the state governments as well, but generally the central government.
Okay. The next question is, the multiple entries and exits in this NEP will affect negatively in terms of getting knowledge and skill.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. Definitely. Someone who exits after first year will be at a disadvantage, even in terms of just knowledge gaining, will be at a disadvantage as compared to someone who has done research in the 4th year and graduates, right? So the employment opportunity, job opportunities will also be very different for these two students, right? So I completely agree with this, that someone who will exit fast will definitely have will be at a more disadvantageous position, right, than someone who has done honors with research.
Thank you. The final question is,
Hmm.
put some light on hybrid or blended mode of teaching and learning in higher education. Like we are in digital era, so instead of so traditional or online mode of learning.
Okay, right. So blended mode of learning again would require a high broadband internet facility. It would require good lighting, in the classrooms. It would require good space and so on. So blended learning has its own challenges, right? And we cannot just immediately start off with the blended learning and think and hope that it will provide the same kind of education to the students, right? So blended learning is good, but again, as a supplementary factor, especially for those who do miss classes sometimes, in some time, maybe they're sick or, they're going somewhere, going for a sports activity and so on, right? But blended learning, we still need to think a lot, again, there are a lot of challenges to a blending learning. One is, of course, availability of teachers, right? Once you cannot be expecting the teacher who's teaching in the classroom to also record the lectures later on, even though many teachers did that. I mean, I think it should be nationally, acknowledged that teachers worked very hard in the 2 years, right? So we need to have more teachers recruited, which is also means giving employment to many highly qualified individuals, right? If we are bringing in blended learning, it has to be accompanied with giving employment to many highly qualified individuals, giving them teaching positions and research assistantships and so on.
Thank you, Dr. Richa, for your initiative presentation on public funded higher education in India, issues of accessibility and inclusivity. You have thrown lights on our new education policy and its pros and cons. I know your ability to present a subject in a mesmerizing way. The subject is more informative today, and as I said, it is penetrating and provoking too. Participants definitely got a lot of information and inspiration from you. We had a great question and answer session today. In fact, thank you for the time and efforts you took to share with us. Thank you, Dr. Richa.
It was totally my pleasure, and thank you once again, Dr. Janta Parthasarathi. You're a very good friend of mine, and we've had such lovely moments at the pre-commissioning, and I miss those days, and it was really wonderful to interact with all the participants here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. Dear participants, the feedback link for the session 4 is posted in our chat. Dr. Ramanadan, sir.
Yes, ma'am, you kindly unmute the other device that I will join with.
Yeah, sure, sir. Yeah, it is done, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Shall we start our session?
Yes, sure, ma'am.
I'm happy to welcome and introduce our resource person, Dr. Ramanadan. He is my another good friend and he contributed a lot in our previous programs. And I know that he is such a voracious reader and he can speak on any topic. I would like to highlight a few achievements from his profile. Dr. Ramanadan is a linguist and assistant professor in the Research Center in English, VHNSN College, Virudhunagar. He did his MA in English and MA Linguistics, MPhil, PhD, B.Ed, and PG DDE. He cleared NET and SLET examinations. His areas of interest are Indian writing in English, subaltern studies, culture and aesthetics, English language teaching and communication skills, linguistics, literary theories. He participated in nearly 28 workshops and seminars, and he presented paper in 58 national and international conferences. He published 43 articles in research articles in national and international journals. He has been a resource person for 16 national and international conferences. And he published 9 books with ISBN and edited 2 journals. Editor of 2 journals. I'm happy to invite such an illustrious scholar to deliver a speech on techno-sociality in the age of consumption. So the session is over to you now.
Yes, thank you, ma'am, for a nice introduction on me. Actually, sorry, something distressed. Okay. Hope you may not find any disturbances, but again, there is a problem. Okay. Now
it is clear.
Am I audible? Yes.
Yeah, sir, very much.
Since I have prepared a PowerPoint and now it's not possible to present the PowerPoint, you, and no problem. I'm going to present this orally. When I was offered to speak in this conference, uh, I felt very happy to know that the NCC units of this college is hosting an international conference in multidisciplinary pursuits. Definitely, it's a new and innovative step or innovative activity that is conducted by NCC units. And I belong to literature. I hope many people belong to different state of discipline, from commerce, from business, and all activities can be undertaken, and all these disciplines can be incorporated into this conference. At the outset, I would like to welcome you all, and my friend Dr. Ajinda Parthasarathy has taken this new initiative. It seems that it's a single women's show. So very nicely organized and very good. Yesterday I have attended one of the sessions in a different ID. Even my friend may not know that I have participated in this program yesterday. With that fine notice, today we would like to talk about the techno-socialism and consumerism, the two important issues that encounters as in our daily life. We are living in a techno-social world, but we are living in an age of consumption. So when a teacher enters into a class, this is simply an anecdote. A teacher enters into a class and he asks this question: in which age we are living? In which age are we living? This is the question posed by the teacher, and the students answered variously. Some of them said that we are living in a post-colonial world, and some of them said that we are living in a neo-colonial world. Many answers have been gathered by the teacher and put together and analyzing the lifestyle of the people. You can simply say that we are living in the age of consumption, because every day we have to consume. Consumption is the basic need of the hour. Consumption is very basic to live. At least we should consume oxygen every day. At least we should consume some food to make us live on. So in this perspective, I would like to tell you that we are living in the age of consumption. We can have the answer in the later phases how this age is how this age can be called as a age of consumption. So my lecture has two parts. The first part will deal with the techno-socialism or techno-sociality, and the second part we may deal with the consumption and the problems of consumerism. These are the two things that we would like to take up in this lecture. Okay. First, let's see what is a techno-socialism. Techno-socialism is a type of socialism that embraces futurism. Futurism is a movement that speculates the future. It may be in the form of prediction, but not to the level of an astrologer. But we should incorporate all the activities that are going now, and we need to speculate what's going to happen in future. The conference title also says that India in 2040, what will be the societal conditions of India, and what will be the social structure, whether we are going to live together within this structure itself, or whether we are going to have a fragmented identity that will be decided later. But we should be able to speculate in some way to understand in what society we are going to live in. This is what we are going to do. So this concept is considered as are called as futurism. Futurism incorporating the developments of science, technology, engineering, and medicine. It's doubtless that everybody can accept these fields, science, engineering, technology, and medicine, have tremendously grown. No disease is left unanswered in the medicine field. Science has answers for almost for all your questions. So this is one of the developments that we have in the field of technospace or technosocialism. You just take this anecdote and you just try this or test this, whether it is true or not. You can test. You enter any house which may have at least 4 members. Every house may have some 4 members. Enter any house. Every person in that house or the housemates sit in a different direction using their own mobile phones and talking to a new personality that are available in the WhatsApp or in the Facebook. They are chatting like this. They have simply forgotten the human relationships that they can find in their home itself. This is one of the problems. So technosocialism involves the technological devices. So after the introduction of these mobile phones, we have come across a new word, maybe a psychological disorder, which is branded as nomophobia. You may have a fear when you don't have a mobile phone. This is what is meant by the word nomophobia. So such a kind of technological enslavement we have in our life. I call it as an enslavement since we are enslaved by the technological devices. And without these technological devices, we feel that we can't survive. This is the situation of us. A very simple example for this statement is that we are used to live with the electricity. Suppose there is an announcement saying that there will be no electricity for 2 days. You think of what will we do to preserve our electricity within the home, and what kind of irritation we may have during those 2 days. You can think of all these things, and you can find that we are the slaves of technologies or technological devices. Electricity is a simple example which is made essential, but it's not essential, but it's made essential. So techno-socialism or techno-sociality is our destiny. It's a compulsion that we are forced to live in techno-social world. So the use of technological devices slaves or enslaves the people. This is the definition of techno-socialism. And techno-socialism or techno-sociality tries to control the time. The first postulation of this lecture is it tries to control the time. Whether it's possible or not, it's a different question, but it perennially tries to control the time. And we have references in our fiction, the references in our movies about a time machine. Time machine, so as it's an imaginary object that's used to undertake the space travel or time travel, time and space travel. Space in the sense not we are making references to sky and all other objects. We are making reference to the time travel. There is a belief using the time machine. A person can travel to the past or to the future. How this is possible? You can have a person like this. How this is possible? In the technological world, everything is possible through the invention. We never thought of saving a person's life, injecting antibiotics or injecting insulin every day, but it's possible now. So everything is possible in the scientific world, and people are moving towards that. People are moving towards that optimistically. All these things are possible in the scientific world. So techno-socialism tries to control the task first. And the second thing is, very pertinently, we should note that techno-socialism is a combination of two words. And in English language, we call it as portmanteau words: technology and socialism. These things are clubbed together to find out a new word as techno-socialism. So this techno-socialism is a capitalist ideology, and we have two ideologies in the world, which is very important for the world to be operated. The first is capitalism, and the second is Marxism, known after the name of Marx, or the Privatization. We can call it as Privatization or Marxism. Marxism is a very specific theory, a very specific sociological theory, which talks about the behavior of the society or the operation of the society. And this techno-socialism is just against the tradition of Marxism. That is, it is the byproduct of capitalist society. And techno-socialism tries to create the new world. And we have a very famous quotation by Tennyson: "Old order changes, yielding place to new, and change is the only inevitable thing can accept that." But in what way? That's the question. When we talk of this techno-sociality, there you may find the interface between the human beings and the machine. This interface is called a cyborg. Cyborg is a development in the techno-social world or technological world. Cyborg is nothing but it's a humanoid. We can call it as a humanoid, a bionic human being. The qualities of the human beings are infused into a machine, or it may be in the form of a robot. The robot is designed to act like a human being. Whatever the human beings do can be done with the help of a robot. And we have this particular technological device today. And we are not speculating it. It happens today. Bionics are available even today. That bionics are called as cyborgs. So definitely in the years to come, we have to encounter the interface between the cyborgs and us. The problem is, who will be the steadier one? Becomes a pertinent question. The machine will succeed. The human beings may lose the identity. They will be identified. The human beings will be identified after the machine. The person who owns a car. Even today, the person who owns a car. A person who owns a Rolls-Royce car, something like that. And we identify the person not with his name, but peculiarly with the name of the car. A person who owns the Rolls-Royce car becomes the identity. That is going to happen in the future. The persons who are having the cyborgs will be identified with the name of the cyborg. This is one of the problems that the society may encounter in future. So it creates, in that sense, it creates a new world order. So you may not work. You may become a laziest person In such an interface, we may be forced to live. When we talk of the technospace or technosocialism, we have to think of the artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is nothing but the ability of a computer or a robot that is connected with the computer to do some task. This is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is infused into cyborgs. Artificial intelligence works in other way too. Artificial intelligence is also a system which preserves the environment and takes action to maximize the chance of achieving the goals. Artificial intelligence aims at maximizing the possibilities of achieving the goals. You can take it as an example. You are going to shop at Amazon. Amazon is one of the online shopping. About that later. In the second part of, we are going to talk about the shopping and related activities in the second part. But take this as an example. You are shopping at Amazon. You have selected a product, and for some reason you preserve it in your cart for some days. After a few days, you open your Facebook. You can find a notification or you can find an advertisement on the product which you have chosen and you have preserved in the cart in the Amazon store. And we have another one example, very famous example. All of you have the habit of viewing YouTube videos. In a few days, YouTube will learn what kind of videos you are watching. And in later phases, YouTube will suggest you the videos that you may watch. All those videos, if you look at all those videos will share a common link. Supposing you are viewing the political ideologies in the YouTube, you may have the political videos in your inbox, in the YouTube inboxes of your phone or your ID. If you are regularly watching the entertainment items in the YouTube, you can find the entertainment items in the inbox of YouTube. How these things are possible? That's why I've said that this artificial intelligence maximize the chance of achieving the goals. The goal of the YouTube is to make you see that video. So this goal is achieved by this artificial intelligence. Every phone or every system you use has this kind of artificial intelligence to know your choices and preferences. Artificial intelligence mimics a cognitive function. It can't act automatically. It simply mimics a person's cognitive function. How your brain acts can be determined by the machine, and the machine suggests you some kind of products that you have to consume or buy. So this artificial intelligence may be helpful for identifying our needs based on our preferences without putting in much effort. The technology reduces our effects. This is one of the postulations that we have in favor of technology. In such a technological world, everything is transacted through a technology. We never want to go to a bank. You can simply sit in your office and you can do transactions. very easy. Very easily you can transact. You can have the business transaction with the help of these technological devices or techno space. When you say that it has reduced the risk of going out, and during this pandemic time, these applications may be useful in order to prevent us or safeguard us from the epidemic. So it's good. Obviously, we can say that it is good. But there are some risk factors. And there is a nice book that was written by Ulrich Beck. The book is entitled as Risk Society Towards a New Modernity, which encapsulates the risk factors of the modern society. What are the risks that the techno-socialism has? Can be enumerated in that particular book. The first thing, so I have selected only 3 points to argue in this lecture from that particular book, that I felt that it was pertinent to be dealt with in this conference. First thing is that there will be a mass production of goods. Always this mass production becomes a problem. When we go back to the industrial revolution that has happened in the Western society, where machines were introduced in the field of production, and many products are produced, many clothes are produced, many digital devices are produced during this revolution. There was a struggle between the nations to find the market to sell their products. And because of this, the new sea routes were laid, and their goods were transported to newer parts of the world. And those newer parts are selected to be the marketplaces of the developed nations. So this kind of social activity to be happened in the near future. The foreign products are going to come in vehemently, very speedily, and we are going to get it either through online or through direct purchasing, retail purchasing. This is an alarming sign of colonization. Industrial revolution yields the problem of colonization first in business or in economics, and then in politics. First, business colonization was taken place, and then the political colonization was taken. So we are deliberately moving into the phase of colonialism with the induction of techno-social values, techno-spatial values. How we are going to encounter? We should be ready for all these things. So this mass production yields the results to colonization by the developed countries. And the second important risk that we have while using the technological devices or while moving into the techno-social values, the new forms of threats may come in. After the World War II, for the nations, it is not necessary to conduct war with another nation to obliterate the economic status or obliterate the nation. It is not necessary to wage a war. They can simply spread a microorganism into their country and infect the people with that. And we call it as a biowar. And the first phases of Corona 2, we thought that the virus was spread by China. It's also a postulation which is not confirmed even today. So this kind of biowars may taken place. First, this is a new form of threat. And another form of threat that every day we have some messages to our mobile phones saying that don't share the OTP to anyone from a banker. We can have this simple message: don't share the OTP or the user ID with any other person. And we have some videos in the YouTube. You can go and search, threatening the people using the technological device. Some days ago, I have encountered a video that was posted in the YouTube. A person was much interested in the Facebook, and he was always in the Facebook. And his ID was hacked. And using the phone number that was available in the Facebook, he received a call. The call recording was posted in the call recordings are posted in the YouTube. The recording says that the person who is speaking from another corner, other line says, you have to pay some 10,000 rupees to us to erase a particular video that we are going to post it into Facebook. The conversation goes like this. This is a new form of a threat, because of which we may have some anxieties over the happenings in the techno-social world. And the third risk is we can't hide anything. We may say that we have some personal affairs or personal matters to hide, and this is too personal to us, and this need not be revealed to anybody else. But remember, all your activities are recorded. Wherever you go, whatever you do, everything is recorded. The service provider, the cell phone service provider that you are using, whether it's Airtel, whether it's Jio, or anything else, the entire network records your activity and they have the record. Then how can you say that your activities are personal? And this is one of the risk factors more dangerous than any other thing. Usually people have the habit of peeping into other windows. So in the techno-social world, the confidentiality of a person or the personal affairs of a person may be lost. So these are the three risk factors that I have taken up for discussion in this lecture. The first is mass production that may yield to the result of polarization in economics and politics. And we may have a new form of threat and the risk of having the risk of revealing our personal matters. Before some days, when I have listened to the interview posted by the director of IIT, Professor Kamakodi, he said that IIT Madras is working on the sixth generation network. Most of us are not entering into the 5G world, but the entire world is working together to bring out the sixth generation space here. So such a fast development is happening in the field of technology, and definitely we are going to stepping into the techno-social world, which is going to colonize us, which is going to enslave us. This is a warning for the techno-social world. With that, we come to the next part of the lecture, consumption. You can verify the meaning of the word consumption, which you may find that it's an act of buying, using, or eating. You can buy anything, you can use anything, and you can eat anything. It's a form of consumption. So consumption is necessary, as I already told you. Consumption is necessary. But how we are consuming, that's the problem. In the old days, you can think of how we have shopped the things. We go around our house in order to look in what are the commodities we need. We take a list of those commodities. With that list, we go to a shop and buy the material that are necessary for us. This is the traditional way of shopping. The recent way of shopping. We don't look for the materials that we need. Instead, we go to the shop, we go to the mall, and the mall will provide you a trolley, and you are entering the mall with a trolley, entering the shop with a trolley, and you can purchase whatever you like to or whatever you want. You come back to your home. You verify whether you have bought only the necessary things or not. You can check it up with the things available in your house. Definitely, you may find that there may be some things that are repeatedly bought that may be in your trolley too. Every house may have some. Every house which has only 2 or 3% may have 4 or 6 soaps. What's the necessity of these things? Something like that. This space is considered as consumerism. There is a difference between consumption and consumerism. And we are entering into the field of consumerism. Consumerism is an idea that increases the consumption of goods. That makes you increase the consumption of goods. That's very important. Consumerism makes you consume more goods or services offered by a particular institution. How this is possible by those persons? And based on our shopping style, there is a new word introduced in the field of English language. The word is onimania. Onimania. We all know that mania is a desire. Onimania is nothing but a compulsory desire to shop. Compulsory desire to do shopping. We in the age of consumption or in the age of consumerism, we often shop not for necessity but for style. Our lifestyle made it necessary for us to pass our time. We go shopping to pass our time. So you can think of how we are shopping. We are shopping through retail markets, which is called as retail shopping, and online shopping is done, and tele-shopping. These are the three ways through which we shop the products or buy the products. Retail shopping, online shopping, and tele-shopping. All these things are possible in the technospatial world. So the companies readily offer all the products, whether you like it or not. It will knock your home. Nowadays, you can find many vendors knocking your doors or pushing your calling bells to sell their products. This kind of consumerism, and we have a new phrase also that is called as window shopping. We are not going to buy anything, but we can go around the shop and look into the windows, whether all the things are available, what are the different things that are available. This kind of habit is developed for us through window shopping. So our attitude is changed. We view that we are born to shop. There is a famous quotation that is used in the Western societies. I shop because I'm. I shop because I'm. This is an existential phrase. Shopping decides our existence. So this is the evil effect of consumerism. Again, consumerism is a byproduct of technosocialism. Mass production of things yields into consumerism. And how these companies promote this consumerism is a peculiar thing. First thing, through the advertisements. You can view any advertisement. The advertisement gives you the false promises. You can remember of the advertisement for the product for a shampoo, for the product of the shampoo. They will show you a shiny hair, and underneath you may find a caption that long and shiny hair. But there I have received a message saying that after the introduction of shampoo in this world, we have lost all our hair. But we never think of that in that particular way. We immediately go to the shop and find the product, whether this product is available, because it gives us a long and shiny hair. In the advertisement, the hair bounces. After using the shampoo, the hair bounces. It is shown like that. But you have failed to notice there is a warning in at the end of the advertisement in a very, very small font, saying that this advertisement uses the camera effect. We fail to notice that particular thing. The company advertently posts the sentence in a very small font that the consumers do not look into that particular phrase. If everybody has looked at that particular phrase or particular sentence, no one will prone to buy that particular product, and the sales of the product may flatten. The sales curve may flatten. So consumerism is the policy or is the idea that is promoted by the corporates. That's not promoted by the consumers, but by the corporates. So these corporates in the age of consumerism decide what I have to use, what I have to consume, what I have to buy. All these things are decided by the corporates in that world. And this is the collective consciousness of the society. And the second important element related to shopping is that we shop for our status, to maintain our status. We shop all the commodities to maintain our status, maintain our dignity. Since because a particular commodity is owned by our neighbor, we buy that and hold it and keep it in the corner of our house. This is an effect of consumerism. The advertisement too says that everybody has bought this particular product, why don't you? So advertisements play a major role in the age of consumerism. We are made to do that. And another one thing that you can note in all the advertisements is that very novel ideas may be introduced. Very novel ideas that can be that is not accepted by the convention can be introduced. For example, you can compare the advertisements for Lifebuoy and Lil. Lifebuoy mostly uses men, whereas Lil uses women. Men are made to bath in closed chambers, and women are made to bath in open space. This is a technique that's used by the soap company, Lil and Lifebuoy. This is the difference between these two advertisements. And we see that. And we are tempted to buy that particular product by these advertisements. So consumerism, why this happened in the field of consumerism? What's the necessity for this? First is, we have the aspirational marketing. Every company sets the goal to the employee to sell the product. The employee runs behind the goals, runs behind achieving the goals. So it is necessary for the employee to promote the sales and give you the false promises in their advertisements or in their contacts to sell their products in order to achieve their goals. So consumerism is based on the aspirational marketing. The second, I have already told you that consumerism is because of our status. We see that our dignity must be preserved. We believe that our dignity must be preserved. That's why people are consistently cheating us by false promises. And the another one thing that's related to this consumerism is that the economic empowerment In India, at least 50% of the people have economically empowered. Economically empowered in the sense, I'm not mentioning that they can buy all those things, but they were somewhat empowered to purchase all the commodities. This consumerism mainly targets the middle class people, not the richest. It concentrates on the middle class people because the middle class people have the urge to live like the richest, and so it targets the middle class people. And these survey says that 75% of the middle class people owns a credit card. Why this is necessary? They won't think whether the credit card that I own is necessary to me or not. Simply because it's advertised by the bank, by the banker, we go to the bank, fill the form and give it to them and purchase the credit card to us, and consistently purchasing goods above our income and persistently caught up with the problem of psychological defects. So these are the evil effects of consumerism. Consumerism is promoted by the advertisements and corporates. So we are living in this age of corporate values. For techno-socialism and consumerism, it's pertinent to note that both these developments are mooted by the corporates in the world in order to prevent the individualized thinking. The technospatial world, the machine is made and it's given to a middle class person, and he buys the machine, he owns it, and he becomes the master of that machine. The advertisements promotes like this: you can become the master of this machine. You can command anything to the machine. The machine can done it for you. Some days ago, when I was a child, it was very difficult to see the vacuum cleaner. I really surprised on seeing the vacuum cleaner. But today, the vacuum cleaner is improvised. We have robotic vacuum cleaners. So the work of a person is consistently being minimized. So in near future, you may not have any work. When you feel thirsty, you go to your kitchen and take a glass of water and drink it in order to quench your thirst. But nowadays, in the Western world, it's not available in India, but in the Western world, it's available. You can find the water balls. You can purchase the not water bottles, water balls. You can purchase the water balls and simply swallow that to quench your thirst. This kind of advancement we have. As I already told you, old order changes yielding place to new. And change is the only inevitable thing that we have to accept. But it's time to us to think of these necessities of this technological world or techno-social world and the products that we are going to consume, the products that we are caught up with in excess of consumerism, how we purchase and how we consume, what kind of technological devices that we are using, and what are the risks that we have to encounter because of using the particular device all these things have to be taken care of. So this lecture is a simple critique of what we are doing. It's simply an eye-opener to think in a different perspective, or to think in the side of effects of using this technological device. So with that, I come to the end of the lecture. Thank you very much for listening patiently. If you have any questions, please post it, and I'm ready to answer for those questions. Thank you.
Participants, you can post your questions in the chat. And now you are able to unmute yourself. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask questions to our resource person. So we are not receiving any questions. Shall we move to the end of the session?
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your deliberations on the techno-sociality in the age of consumption. The topic was timely, and you presented in a way that everyone can understand. That's why we are not getting any questions. As usual, your speech brought new insights from current research. We have a lot of take-home knowledge from this session. Question. And thank you once again for your valuable session with us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Participants, our feedback link for this session is posted in chat. And the next session will begin at 2 p.m.